For 15 years, the images have followed the same pattern. Skyscrapers in Gaza crumbling to dust, children sprinting through the rubble, world leaders releasing carefully worded statements that dissolve into history within days. We had grown used to it. We had almost accepted it as the permanent rhythm of this region. But on March 17, 2026, that rhythm broke. For the first time in the modern history of this conflict, Israel is living what it has long inflicted. The paralysis of insecurity. Not a single intercepted rocket that Iron Dome swats away before breakfast, but wave after wave after wave. Missiles and drones arriving in relentless rotation, forcing millions of Israelis into bunkers, snapping awake at every siren, unsure whether the next dawn will come quietly. And here is what makes this moment even more unsettling. We don't fully know the damage, not because no one is recording, but because Israel has imposed what military analysts are calling its strictest wartime censorship in modern history. A foreign media manager operating inside Israel admitted it plainly. Our coverage of this war has not been fully truthful. So what is actually happening in the skies over Tel Aviv? And how did Iran become capable of something the world once considered impossible? This video is geopolitical analysis and historical context. It does not advocate violence against any party. It exists solely for education and informed discussion. Indian journalist Praj Mohan Singh was on the ground in Israel when the 54th wave struck. What he described wasn't a war zone, it was a ghost war. Journalists were barred from missile impact sites. Filming damage was prohibited. Hospitals were sealed off from all media. We heard the explosions, he wrote. We smelled the gunpowder, but we couldn't show the world what was actually happening. Some Israelis kept recording anyway, on their phones, quietly, quickly. Fragments of footage that slipped past censors revealed small but devastating windows into reality. An apartment in Rishon LeZion with its roof caved in. A fire in Holon consuming 3 houses simultaneously. Streets in Tel Aviv swallowed by darkness as power failed across entire districts. And then there was an elderly woman in Bnei Brak, sitting in a wheelchair on the sidewalk, her apartment destroyed by shrapnel. She didn't cry, she didn't shout, she simply murmured, over and over, my house, those 2 words, the same 2 words thousands of grandmothers in Gaza have been whispering for 15 years. The difference this time was that cameras were not allowed to record it. So how did Iran reach this point? How did it acquire the capability to do what analysts once dismissed as fantasy? The answer sits in 2 missiles that form the backbone of Operation True Promise 4, now into its 56th consecutive wave of attacks. The first is the Sejil, a solid-fuel ballistic missile traveling at Mach-12, 12 times the speed of sound. From the Iranian border to Tel Aviv, its flight time is under 10 minutes. Iron Dome was engineered to intercept short-range, slow-moving rockets. Against the Sejil, the system's reaction window is nearly 0. The second is the Khorramshahr 4, nicknamed the Super Heavy for a reason. It carries a 2-ton warhead. The IRGC claims this missile successfully struck a Rafael missile depot in northern Israel, a facility housing some of Israel's most advanced weaponry. If that claim holds, the explosion didn't just destroy buildings, it fractured Israel's military supply chain. The cumulative numbers are staggering. Since February 28th, Iran claims to have launched 700 missiles and 3,600 drones. Israel's own INSS recorded lower figures, 571 missiles and 1,399 drones. But the gap in numbers is almost beside the point. What matters is the pattern. The attacks do not stop. This is a war of attrition, deliberately designed. Each Iranian missile costs tens of thousands of dollars. Each Iron Dome interception cost between $100,000 and $200,000. In a sustained war of attrition, the advantage belongs to whoever has the most patience, and Iran, after 4 decades of living under international sanctions, has mastered patience as a national discipline. But behind those cold statistics, there is one event that shifted everything: the tragedy at Minab Elementary School. On March 11, 2026, a missile struck a southern district. The target, Israel said, was military, but fragments fell on school grounds. 165 schoolgirls and staff members were killed. The average age of the victims was 9 years old. A mother in Tehran, Fatima, lost her only daughter that day. She didn't collapse in front of cameras. She wasn't pulled aside for a foreign media interview. She simply stood at the mass funeral among 164 other mothers, holding a photograph of her child. No banners, no chants, just photographs. One can barely begin to imagine the weight of that silence. 3 days later, during Quds Day demonstrations, those photographs appeared everywhere. Protesters held up the faces of Minab's children. A young man in the crowd called out, "Minab girls, you are innocent. Your sacrifice will not be forgotten. The day of justice will come." What was striking was who else was watching. In Tehran's public spaces, young people, many of them openly critical of their own government, went quiet. They watched cities like Tel Aviv and Beersheba burning on television. They heard about the deaths of 9 Israelis. And then, almost in a whisper, someone said, perhaps it is time for them to understand what it feels like. A professor at Tehran University described it simply: even people who despise the government still cannot tolerate bombs falling on a school full of children. That is not politics. That is a basic human response. So why won't Iran negotiate? Why are ceasefire proposals consistently rejected? The answer for Iranian leadership is a single word: Libya. In 2003, Muammar Gaddafi did exactly what the West asked. He dismantled his weapons program. He opened himself to dialogue. He cooperated. In 2011, he was dragged through the streets and killed by a mob. His country has not recovered to this day. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has been unequivocal. We are not requesting a ceasefire. We are not requesting negotiations. This is not arrogance. This is a doctrine shaped by collective historical trauma. Meanwhile, the coalition arrayed against Iran is beginning to fracture from within. President Trump is facing mounting domestic pressure as oil prices breach $100 per barrel, a direct consequence of the Strait of Hormuz blockade. He wants a swift resolution. Netanyahu, however, is pursuing a longer horizon. Regime change in Tehran. Two allies, two fundamentally different endgames. Iran, by contrast, is unified in its position. The attacks will not stop until they are met with an unconditional end to aggression. With a population of 85 million and a network of resistance forces spanning 4 countries, Iran is not easily cornered. The scale is too vast. The consequences of miscalculation are too severe to contemplate. So where does this leave us? We may not be able to stop the missiles flying over Tel Aviv or Tehran. We cannot negotiate on behalf of governments that have already chosen their paths, but we can choose one thing: not to be complicit in the burial of truth. When censorship operates at full capacity, when mainstream outlets offer half the story and call it journalism, the responsibility falls on us, the audience, to keep asking, keep searching, keep demanding the complete picture. If this perspective matters to you, hit like, not for the numbers, but to tell the algorithm that there are viewers out there who want depth, not just spectacle. Leave a comment. Tell us how your country's media is covering this conflict, or not covering it. Are they still framing Iran's actions as unprovoked aggression, while the 165 children of Minab remain unnamed? Subscribe if you want to follow this story as it develops, because this conflict is not winding down. It may in fact be entering its most consequential chapter yet. We'll see you in the next video.